Most new build buyers think that the builder's rep is there to help them. They're not. I helped one client save nearly $50,000 by just asking questions that the whole sales office really didn't want me to ask. Before you walk into a model home in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, you need to know how this game actually works. But before we start, so if you're a first-time buyer in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and you want to know what you actually can afford when it comes to a house, just click the link in the description. I made a custom GPT and I'll give it to you for free. The first point when it comes to new construction is that the builder's rep is not your agent. The builder's rep doesn't work for you. They work for the builder. So if you're buying a home for like a D.R. Horton or a Highland Homes or something like that in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, it's not the job of the person that's sitting in the model home office to actually give you the best deal. It's actually their job as an employee of the builder to ensure that the builder makes the most money. So yes, they're going to give you incentives, but really their fiduciary and who they work for isn't you, the buyer. The fiduciary is for the builder. So at the end of the day, they're going to always be leaning and have a bias towards what is in the biggest benefit of the builder, not necessarily for the buyer. Does that make sense? So an example of this is that I recently just had a client that they were closing on a new construction home in Corinth in like 3 or 4 days. And what had happened is that part of the deal is that we were able to negotiate a fridge inside of the deal. So the builder, they came and installed the fridge, and we did a home walkthrough. And during the home walkthrough, we noticed that when you opened the door of the fridge, every time you opened the door, because of how the door was designed, it just hit the kitchen cabinets. Okay, so the door essentially was like a non-functioning door because you would open it and it would just slam right into the kitchen cabinets. And my client very understandably was like, okay, we need a new fridge. We then asked the builder if they can give us a new fridge, and the builder rep said no. In fact, like of the dozens and dozens of homes that they've done with this floor plan, this is the fridge that they install, and they've never installed another fridge. Like, there's no shot. So my client, very respectfully and very understandably, really didn't want to just let that be. So he really urged me, like, we need to figure out how to get this new fridge, which makes sense. And so me as his agent, I actually found my way. I went to the builder's rep. I asked for that person's boss. I went to that person's boss. I asked for that person's boss. I found my way all the way up the chain on his behalf, and I got to ask the right questions. I got to have an opportunity to represent my client and fight for him and just communicate that this fridge actually isn't the right fridge that should go in this location for this house. And they ended up putting the new fridge in there. And so all to say, that wouldn't have happened if the buyer would have just been dealing with the builder's rep. They would have been met with just a brick wall, because the builder rep said no, and if they wouldn't have had an agent representing them, that would have been the answer. It just would have been no. And so I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to serve them and represent them in that process, because I actually got to fight on their behalf to help them get the fridge that actually makes sense. So now when they open it, it no longer hits the kitchen cabinets. All to say, the builder's rep does not work for you. They work for the builder. The next point is a more financial point. So there's a thought that if you go unrepresented, you actually save money. And that's typically not the case. Okay, so let me show you an example of this. So let's say that you're buying a home. It's worth $600,000. Okay, here's the sales price of the new construction home that you're purchasing. Typically, builders will pay your buyer's agent like 3% or so. And so let's just use 3% in this example. So if you have an agent, if you're buying a $600,000 house, your agent makes 3%, that's $18,000. Great. What people might expect is if you don't have an agent, that this 3% of the agent fee that the builder would be paying to your agent is saved. Therefore, what would happen, what people think happens, is that you can just subtract that 3% from the first sales price, because the builder was already planning on giving that 3% to your agent. So if you don't have an agent, then they can just say, hey, we were already planning on giving that anyway. Let's just give it as a credit to the buyer because they don't have an agent. That is typically not what happens. So what happens is that if you don't have an agent, they don't have to pay 3%. So they see it as an opportunity to still sell you the home at $600,000 while also paying your agent nothing because you don't have an agent. So they see it as an opportunity whenever you are going in unrepresented to actually make more money, because they don't have to pay out an agent fee. And so if you don't know that and you don't ask and know the math of what normally builders are thinking, you might overpay for your house by 3% or more, or whatever the agent fee was going to be. And just as a reminder, if you're a first-time buyer and you're wanting to know what you can actually afford, just click the link in the description. I'll give you away my custom GPT totally for free. Okay, so the last point that I want to tell you is what you actually don't know will cost you. So let me give you an example of what happened with one of my clients. So there are 3 homes, 3 houses. Okay, this is the one that my client was interested in. And let's say that this home was worth $600,000. Okay. The builder, this was the asking price that the builder had on it, $600,000. And they were saying, oh, it's because of the upgrades. Oh, it's because of the location, blah, 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 blah. They were saying it's worth $600,000, but it's been sitting in the market for 6 months. Okay. There were 2 other homes in the neighborhood that have sold. One sold, let's call it, for $550,000. The other sold, or let's call it $560,000. These 2 already sold, okay? They already sold. If my client didn't have an agent, I don't know if many people know this, but sales data, like what homes actually sell for, the price of what they closed for, is not public. Really, one of the only ways that you can get that information is if you have a real estate agent. So he had a real estate agent. I was able to look up, comparable homes in the neighborhood. We found that 2 homes that were in the neighborhood sold for basically $50,000 less than what the builder was asking for. So you know what I did? Is I took this home that sold for $550,000 and I took it to the builder. And I said, hey, that home that you're asking $600,000 for, it basically just sold for $550,000. So we need a $50,000 discount. And guess what they did? They actually turned that $600,000 into $550,000, and my client got basically a $50,000 discount on the deal. So this information you wouldn't have access to if you don't have an agent. And so just another reason why it's so important and so critical to use an agent in the deal whenever you're purchasing a new construction home, because they can unearth new information and things that can ultimately save you a lot of money. So grateful to be able to talk to you guys today about all this stuff. Like I said before, if you're a first-time buyer and you want to know what you can afford, just click the link in the description. It's a custom GPT. It'll ask you a variety of questions, and you'll end up finding out, what's a reasonable number that you could actually afford for a house, subject to a lender, of course. Another thing is that if you want to work with me and you want me to help you buy a home, whether it's a new construction, whether it's a pre-owned, or you have a home that you want to sell in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, just click the link in the description to book a call with me, and I would be so honored to represent you and serve you in this transition. God bless you guys. Peace. See you next week.